I wanted to spend a few minutes just talking through the Luminaire dialog box, explaining a few of the functions that are in there. When you first click choose Luminaire, you get this building database process, which is reading the data structure, reading the folders that we've got down here, and then reading the various levels below that, so that when you go through and select a particular lantern, it already knows the next series of lanterns below that. So as we go down each of the folder structures, if there's luminaires available in that folder, then those are obviously displayed. So we can sort the information in a number of different ways, and by clicking either these options at the top up here, or we can click on top of the columns for each of those, any of the items that are displayed. So, and when other columns appear through calculation and so on, then we can also sort by those as well. In this case, I've sorted it by wattage, by the flux. So in theory, the lowest wattage is at the top, and it goes all the way down to the highest one at the bottom. So there was a couple of things in this dialog box I wanted just to talk through. Firstly, when we select a lantern, we get an instantaneous calculation over on the left hand side here of the results for that particular geometry that I've got set up. But more importantly, we can also look at the distribution of the lantern, and sometimes when you choose a project to design, you may know an approximate wattage of fitting that you want to use, but you might not necessarily know the best distribution, and sometimes you can use the polar curve here to take a look at the distribution of the various optics to see which may be the best solution to use for that particular design. We have three different distributions to look at. The first one is the green distribution. I'm just going to turn that off for the time being. We've got the blue distribution, which shows a section through the middle of the lantern and perpendicular to the curb. So it shows you the amount of light that's going across the road, and as we switch to other distributions, you can see how if this distribution comes further up this part here, we're effectively getting more light going across the road. The red distribution shows the amount of light that's parallel with the curb, and obviously you lose the forward throw in getting the sideways throw, so or towing the lantern in and out, as we often call it. So you can see how between these particular luminaires the distribution here is coming slightly lower away from the center, and therefore you'd expect that value to be higher. The last one is the green distribution, and this shows the peak output that's in the C-plane. The C-plane is, if you imagine looking down on top of the luminaire, the 0 point is to the right and 90 is straight up to the top, or that's certainly the way we do it in the UK and Europe. There are different methodologies in other countries as well. So showing that the distribution is highest at the 150 through 330, so that is 150 is would be sort of over to the left hand side. So you can see where the peak distribution is actually going in terms of whether it's going up and down the road or what have you. So we also in this box we have a file where we can actually look at the photometry file. Sometimes that's useful to pick out bits of information that might be useful there. We've got the edit facility, which allows us to copy information and take that into other programs, into AutoCAD, into inventory software, a Word file, or a project setup, and so on. And lastly, we've got an image of the file, so we can actually see what the fitting actually looks like. Lastly, in this box we've got the favorites option, and this can be useful if there are certain distributions you use, or I tend to use this to store information on certain projects that I've worked on. So simply we select the fitting here, go into edit comments, and we can then change that information in this box here to the project number, and so I now know that on that project I've done that, used that particular fitting. Last but not least, obviously we can optimize the particular lantern that we've selected for a particular project. Going back to the lanterns we were using before. So we can go through and just flick up and down with the wheel of the mouse and look at a particular luminaire to see what the best solution is and what spacing that will actually give us. Or we can optimize the whole folder, and in this case we've got 217 different photometry files, and as you can see it's counting up through those as it's calculating them. We get to a certain point, and I suspect after this we're getting X's all the time, so there's probably not going to be another result returned for that. As I said before, we can sort this by spacing, we can still go back and sort it by flux, and then go through and then decide on the best fitting for that particular project or solution. Thank you very much for listening. If there's anything further you want me to look at, please drop me an email to support@lightingreality.com,